The San Antonio Spurs will not return to the NBA Finals without Devin Vassell. In 23 playoff games, he shot 37.8% from three and earned almost 35 minutes per night. But he has never made an All-Star team, never earned an All-NBA or All-Defensive selection, and watched his scoring fall from a career-high 19.5 points to 13.9 last season. Those three facts appear to tell completely different stories: an undecorated player, an apparent offensive decline, and a postseason contributor his coach refused to remove from the floor. Together, they create the real question surrounding Vassell's future. Did he simply become less important as San Antonio added more talent? Or did accepting a smaller role transform him into the exact two-way wing the Spurs need to win a championship? By the end of this video, we will determine which answer is closer to the truth. Vassell entered the NBA as the 11th overall selection in the 2020 draft, becoming San Antonio's first lottery pick since Tim Duncan in 1997. The original appeal was easy to understand. He had length, defensive instincts, a reliable outside shot, and enough offensive potential to develop beyond a traditional role player. That development arrived quickly. Vassell averaged 18.5 points during his third season and reached 19.5 the following year, giving the Spurs a young perimeter scorer capable of creating difficult shots. At that stage of the rebuild, it was reasonable to believe he could eventually become an all-star level offensive option. San Antonio needed him to handle the ball, attack pick-and-roll coverages, and rescue possessions, because the roster did not have enough established creators. The franchise changed when Victor Wembanyama arrived, and the hierarchy changed again when De'Aaron Fox, Stephen Castle, and Dylan Harper entered the picture. Vassell went from taking more than 15 shots per game in 2023-24 to just over 11 last season. His scoring declined to 13.9 points, but that number does not tell the entire story. He still made 38.4% of his three-pointers, while attempting more than 6 per game, and his turnovers dropped below 1 per night. Instead of chasing the touches that once defined his role, Vassell began making quicker decisions inside an offense built around other players. The statistical decline was real. The question is whether it represented regression or the cost of becoming more compatible with a championship roster. That compatibility begins with spacing. When Wembanyama receives the ball near the paint, opponents must choose between defending him individually or bringing additional help. A dependable shooter on the weak side makes that decision much more dangerous. The same principle applies when Fox attacks downhill, Castle powers through the first defender, or Harper penetrates from the perimeter. Vassell can relocate after a drive, lift out of the corner, drift toward open space, or punish a defender who turns his head for 1 second. None of those actions creates the same attention as an isolation basket, but each one influences the geometry of the possession. San Antonio already has players who can force a defense to collapse. Vassell's job is to make sure the defense cannot recover without conceding something valuable. He also retains enough scoring ability to attack the advantage after it has been created. A conventional spot-up specialist may shoot when open, but struggle when a defender closes out under control. Vassell can take 1 or 2 dribbles, reach the middle of the floor, and create a pull-up jumper or a secondary pass. He does not need the offense to begin with him to influence how it ends. That distinction is important because playoff defenses eventually take away the first option. Wembanyama will be doubled, Fox will encounter crowded driving lanes, and Castle and Harper will be forced into difficult decisions. When that happens, the ball often reaches a player who has only a few seconds to solve the possession. Vassell's previous experience as a primary scorer gives him more answers than the average complementary wing. His defensive value makes the role even more important. Vassell is not a one-man defensive system, and Wembanyama remains the foundation of San Antonio's identity on that end. But Vassell's length, screen navigation, and ability to contest perimeter shots allow the Spurs to apply pressure before an opponent reaches Victor. He can chase shooters, recover after being screened, and disrupt passing lanes without completely abandoning his assignment. During the postseason, he averaged 1.3 steals and 0.7 blocks while collecting more than 5 rebounds per game. Those numbers do not automatically make him an all-defensive player, but they show why his impact cannot be evaluated only through points. He contributed to the defensive structure that allowed San Antonio to survive 4 different playoff matchups. The clearest evidence was Mitch Johnson's trust. Vassell averaged 13 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 2.7 assists across San Antonio's 23 playoff games, while remaining on the court for nearly 35 minutes per night. His numbers did not suddenly explode, but his role survived as the competition became more demanding. Coaches shorten rotations during the postseason because every weakness becomes easier to target. Players who cannot defend are attacked. Players who cannot shoot are ignored. Players who require the ball can disrupt more valuable creators. Vassell remained playable because he gave San Antonio answers at both ends without forcing the team to redesign its offense around him. His minutes may be stronger evidence of his importance than his scoring average. But this is where the praise requires a realistic limit. Calling Vassell unselfish cannot become an excuse for every decline in production, and describing him as a 3-and-D player cannot remove all offensive expectations. The Spurs still need him to punish aggressive closeouts, create an efficient shot when a possession breaks down, and remain dangerous when opponents force the ball away from Wembanyama. A championship role player cannot disappear simply because he is no longer the first option. The most valuable version of Vassell is not passive. It is decisive. If you believe players who sacrifice statistics for winning deserve more recognition, like the video and subscribe for more Spurs analysis, because the deeper roster has created an uncomfortable new question about his future. San Antonio added Tobias Harris, Jaden Quaintance, and Taurus Reed Jr., while retaining important options such as Harrison Barnes and Julian Champagnie. Carter Bryant needs opportunities to develop, and Keldon Johnson will continue fighting for his position in the rotation. Quaintance and Reed are primarily front-court additions, but collectively, these moves give Mitch Johnson more ways to construct a lineup. Harris can provide size and scoring. Champagnie can space the floor. Barnes supplies experience, while Bryant offers defensive upside and athleticism. When a roster becomes deeper, players with incomplete skill sets become easier to replace. That creates the central threat to Vassell's position. If his scoring remains low and his defense becomes less consistent, is he truly indispensable? Or is he simply another option on a roster that now has more of them? The answer depends on whether Vassell continues combining skills that the other options provide separately. Harris and Barnes can score, but neither offers the same perimeter mobility. Champagnie can shoot, but Vassell has more experience creating after a closeout. Bryant may eventually become a better defensive weapon, but he has not yet demonstrated the same shooting and postseason reliability. Keldon brings physical scoring pressure, but his defensive fit can be more complicated. Vassell's advantage is not that he dominates one category. It is that he can shoot, defend, make secondary decisions, and fit beside almost every important player on the roster. That versatility protects his minutes, but only if all those elements remain dependable. San Antonio can use Fox, Castle, and Harper in several different backcourt combinations, but those groups still require a wing who can defend without demanding the ball. The Spurs can play bigger with Harris or Barnes, or become younger and more athletic with Bryant, but they still need shooting around Wembanyama. Vassell connects those lineup concepts. He can spend several possessions spacing the floor, then create a shot when the normal offense stops producing. He can defend the opposing team's dangerous perimeter scorer without becoming a complete liability on offense. Because he does not require one specific lineup to function, Mitch Johnson can keep him involved as matchups change throughout a playoff series. However, unselfishness does not mean disappearing. That will be the most important distinction for Vassell next season. If he attempts to reclaim the offensive hierarchy he held before San Antonio's young stars emerged, he could interrupt the development of Castle and Harper, or take possessions away from more efficient creators. But if he takes the idea of sacrifice too far, defenders may stop treating him like a complete scorer. They could close out less aggressively, send more help toward Wembanyama, and force Vassell to prove that he is still willing to attack. His responsibility is to understand when the team needs restraint and when it needs aggression. The Spurs do not require another player constantly demanding touches. They do require someone capable of punishing a defense for believing he will never demand them. That balance will define whether Vassell's transformation is permanent. His three-point volume must remain high enough to influence defensive positioning. His accuracy must survive the more difficult attempts created by playoff closeouts. He must continue navigating screens, finishing defensive possessions with rebounds, and making quick choices when the ball reaches him. Most importantly, he must remain a credible secondary creator when Wembanyama, Fox, Castle, or Harper cannot solve the possession. Vassell does not need to return to 20 points per game, but he must be dangerous enough that opponents cannot hide a weak defender on him or use his matchup to overload San Antonio's stars. The final verdict is that Devin Vassell has already demonstrated the willingness to become the player San Antonio needed, but next season will determine whether that sacrifice made him indispensable or merely easier to replace. His 2026 postseason proved that he could remain on the floor deep into a championship run without needing superstar usage. Now, the deeper roster will demand even more consistency from his shooting, defense, and decision-making. Wembanyama determines the ceiling of the franchise. Fox, Castle, and Harper generate the pressure that drives the offense. Vassell helps turn those individual advantages into a complete playoff lineup. He may never receive the awards attached to San Antonio's biggest names, but if the Spurs reach another NBA Finals, his two-way production could once again be one of the reasons they survived long enough to get there. To understand how San Antonio's championship ceiling still depends on Victor Wembanyama's next offensive leap, watch our breakdown of whether one historic season could place him on a faster path toward surpassing Nikola Jokic.